Well, good morning. Good morning. It is a somewhat frigid morning in the Midwest here in the Chicago region. And of course, that's in keeping with January, but we got seduced by 9 days of relatively balmy weather. So today, when it plunged, all of us were shocked. And how are you doing with that shell shock this morning, Barrett?
Well, as I was telling you, I did run out to take my garbage out for the pickup this morning, and yeah, I didn't even grab my winter coat, so it was a chilly few minutes out there in the cold. But I had my adrenaline running because I was afraid of missing the garbage pickup, so I think that helped keep me warm in the meantime.
Yeah, it is interesting how easily we get involved in all of our little expectations and anticipations, and you know the whole journey with the ego is one of like a drunken driver veering from the left side to the right side of the road over and over again. So that keeps us on point as far as the recognition that none of this is real. This erratic, crazy, up and down, convoluted journey in actual truth is simply a mad roller coaster ride going on in our mind. And really, the challenge is to recognize that and not buy into the illusion.
It is true. It is true. And we have to do that again and again and again. And we get it deeper and deeper and deeper. But I remember an experience a number of years ago. I was in a men's group, and I'd been studying the course for a few years, and I was going through some really painful family dynamics. And it was heavy. It was heavy and hard. And I remember saying in the men's group, I'm so glad that none of this is real. And not all of them were really into the course or non-duality. So, um, but we had a kind of rule that people could just say what they wanted, and no interruptions. So no one challenged me on it, and I just got to express my relief at the illusory nature of this dream world. And uh, yeah, but I feel that way a lot when things start to feel like they're heating up here in the world. To realize it's not actually happening is a real way to free myself from what's going on.
Yeah, and that really is the point of what we're doing with all of our activities with the Course in Miracles is getting to that plateau where we are still within this world, but we are no longer a victim of this world. And, that ends up liberating us to move on and to really pick up our mission in this lifetime, which is not so much about waking up others, but awakening ourselves to the degree that we're creating an undertow and we're pulling others up with us. So, you know, A Course in Miracles is not something that involves crusaders. We're not out there beating the bushes with our swords trying to liberate people. All of the work is done within ourselves, and within that journey, it releases everybody else around us that we had attachments to, that we were dragging behind us in a very dark passage through time and space. All of a sudden, we hit that point of recognizing eternity and realizing that that's where we're actually at. And within eternity, that's the key to releasing everybody around us. So it is a beautiful process once you get into the Course. It's a mindful process, and it is causing you to always bring yourself back to this present moment.
Again and again and again. And it actually dovetails really nicely right into that section that you brought up, which is in the text, chapter 2, section 4, healing as release from fear. So as Jesus tells us here, he says our emphasis is now on healing. The miracle is the means, the atonement is the principle, and healing is the result. So just to kind of break this down a little bit, the miracle is always an inner shift, right? It's a shift from fear to love. The atonement is the principle. This is the principle that we're talking about. Nothing really happened. You're still safe in heaven. You've never left the oneness of God. And healing is the result, right? So healing is that lessening of attachment to fear. So the more that we do this work, the less the fear grips us. And when it does grip us, it doesn't grip us as long or as deeply. We move through it more quickly. And as we keep working with it and we keep practicing it, we will all ultimately get to a state where we just are not affected by fear at all. We do not buy into the ego's thought system at all. And so we don't suffer from the ego's effects, seeming effects anymore, because we give it no more power. And that's where we're going with this practice.
Very true. And to continue where you left off there, it says, to speak of a miracle of healing is to combine two orders of reality inappropriate. Healing is not a miracle. So here we're given the understanding that the healings that we experience are merely the dismissal of an illusion. And that actually creates a physical manifestation. So the miracle is what is occurring within the mind. The healing is what is incurring in your circumstances, either within your body or within your finances or within some aspect of your life. And again, I've also believed that every time you experience that moment of recognition of your oneness with God, which is called the atonement, every time that occurs, there will be some physical manifestation. Whether or not it is significant enough so that you notice it is purely up in the air. But somehow, some way, there is an impact every time that we go to the well and we draw up and drink deeply of the water of forgiveness and oneness. And that's really the beauty of the way the Course works, is it makes the whole process very clear. We are not given all of these images that you see in the Bible where, Jesus is mixing mud out of water and dirt and smashing it into this guy's eyes to restore his sight. We have a lot of misunderstood images in all other texts. But in A Course in Miracles, you enter into a relationship with Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God. And the foundation of that relationship is lucidity. You can see clearly the process. It is broken down into each individual stage and the result of each action you take. So within that, there is an astonishing level of comprehension that is offered to you if you're willing to go the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, one of the things that Jesus talks about is he uses this term, the vision of Christ. And what he means as he's talking about this is it's seeing without any fear within us. When we see without any scrap of fear left within our mind, then all we see is either people expressing love or people asking for love. So again, no matter what's unfolding on this level of form, that true seeing is a seeing that everyone is worthy of love, and that's all we need to do is respond with love to whatever's unfolding. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't do things to sort of, maybe it's the most loving thing to send a violent person to jail. Maybe it's the most loving thing to speak out against someone who is acting hatefully. But we can even speak out for love without any sort of enmity or attack in us. And this is the kind of the whole point of it, is it's the attitude that we have as we're acting and as we're doing things, as we're speaking. It's the attitude we have that matters, not the words that we're saying, not the deeds that we're doing. Are they coming from a place of love and kindness, or are they coming from a place of separation and fear? And again, that's really the course boiled down into just one concept. And we just have to practice that again and again and again. And when we notice that we're not coming from love, we don't beat ourselves up for that, right? We treat ourselves gently. We treat ourselves with kindness. We say, I made a mistake. I went and grabbed the ego's hand again, and look what happened. I ended up suffering and being upset. And I can just instead make another choice right here, right now. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, it's all about, returning. I mean, it's just, you're on the path. Your mind wanders off over into the bushes. You get caught up with Brer Rabbit and, that whole crew of imagery around, this idea that there is convolution, that there are twists and turns, that there are brambles and thorns and spikes that you're going to be encountering. And once you notice that, the rose has a thorn on it, that means, whoops, I slid off the path here. So then you're just pulling yourself back over and over again and arriving at that point where you recognize that all of the things that you are thinking are real, are completely and totally without any kind of foundation, because they were not created by God. And that's really how the Course starts out, is giving us this recognition that all that is real, God created. Everything else is an illusion. And all of creation was created in love and by love. So therefore, if you're experiencing things in your life that are not loving and fulfilling you with love, then that means that you're believing in something that isn't real.
That is so spot on. And I have a very clear example of that. I'll share a little bit, because as most people know, I'm moving to Germany next month. And so there's a lot that needs to happen in order to get things ready and to move out of here and to head over there. And yesterday, tensions kind of mounted between my fiance and me around the move and the dynamics of the move. And I was feeling attacked by her, and I was feeling like a victim of her ideas of how this whole thing should unfold, and it wasn't unfolding according to plan and all this stuff. So so then I pushed back, and it was a lack of kindness, definitely. But again, as we're saying, what I had to do is I had to catch myself, and I had to realize I was making all of this real. I was making the way that this move unfolds and the interactions with my fiance out to be my salvation. If things went a certain way, I was happy. If they're going this other way, then I wasn't happy. But I was believing that my state of mind was dependent on the situation, the circumstance around me. And that's always ego. Whenever we're believing that is an ego thought. And so then what we have to do, what I did, is I just had to kind of catch myself and start to step back from that. And as we work with this, we realize I'm not a victim of the world I see, as one of the workbook lessons says. So I just sort of applied that idea, and I worked through the emotions that were connected to it, and I didn't hide them, I didn't suppress them, I allowed them, but I started to see them in a new light, and just sort of like taking Jesus's hand and looking at all of it. And then as I kept working with it, again, now this morning, I feel much less tension. Maybe there's still a little bit, right? But it's nowhere what it was yesterday. And whatever little bits just here, I just keep doing the same process with this. I just release and I release and I release. So yeah, so that's again a really real world example of this. That I'm doing this forgiveness with. As this section says, healing is a release from fear. So I'm doing the healing to release my mind from the grip of fear, that there was fear in me, something is wrong, something's not right, I need to do something different in order to be at peace. And I didn't really need to do something different in an outer way, but I needed to do something different in an inner way. I needed to let go of that ego grip of fear that I was in, and to say, I can move through all this with love in my heart and with peace as my attitude. And I can come from kindness as we step forward into these next steps of the move. So that's kind of been my work and my journey with these principles in my life. So
Yeah, and it makes things so much easier when you can recognize and differentiate between the two voices. Am I listening to the ego, or am I listening to my true self, the Christ within me? And, sometimes that can get very intense, because when you start to side with the Christ, when you start to embrace that, all of a sudden the ego really puts on this, incredible pity party, and woe is me, and the whole world is coming to an end. And it can get very rankus. I mean, you can end up feeling like you're being pummeled through life if you are allowing yourself to embrace that ego identity. So what we have to do over and over again is, like you said, Barrett, just step back, step out of it. And, sometimes breathing exercises can be very beneficial. Just, breathe deeply and slowly, and feel yourself pulling spirit all the way down inside you, so that you're purifying this sense of an ego, and you're purifying a sense of self. Because it's going to take a long time, multiple lifetimes, more than likely, before we can get rid of that sense of the separate self and replace it with the true self, which is completely oblivious to itself. It is just this expression of joy and creativity and love and being in the truest sense. So when that little ego all of a sudden starts to become insufferably small, again, you're on the right track, because the ego has absolutely nothing that you want. And the only way that it can seduce you is, by throwing these things in your face over and over again. So it is a very plodding kind of experience that comes across your path every once in a while, where you're just, shrugging off the ego over and over again, and taking each step individually, and placing your foot exactly where you want it to be, and then pulling your other foot forward. Sometimes that's the way the journey works. Looking at this last section of what we're on here, it says the value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. In fact, if it is used truly, it will invariably be expressed in whatever way is most helpful to the receiver. This means that a miracle, to attain its full efficacy, must be expressed in a language that the recipient can understand without fear. And that's where it becomes, that journey of over and over and over and over, until you finally let go of that last little shred of fear. This does not necessarily mean that this is the highest level of communication of which he is capable. It does mean, however, that it is the highest level of communication of which he is capable now. The whole aim of the miracle is to raise the level of communication, not to lower it by increasing fear. So every teeny tiny step that you take is moving you forward, and you can be assured of that. It may not seem like it in the moment, but then a year later, you look back and you realize, oh, when I turned that one little corner, which seems so insignificant, it led me into a whole different experience of the world. And that's what we're called upon to do.
Yeah. And another way I read that last paragraph that you just read is that this is telling us that we don't need to go out and preach a course, as we were saying earlier, right? We don't need to tell everyone, the world is an illusion. Nothing here is real. This is all just a dream. What are you worrying about? Most people are not into non-duality, and we don't need to be the one that's sort of coming at it from that level. And in fact, often what is the most loving with someone is to not go there, right? Even though we might be kind of thinking these thoughts within ourselves, it may be the most loving thing just to act lovingly, maybe give someone a hug, maybe just tell them you love them, or maybe just say some kind words. It doesn't have to be, oh, and here's a workbook lesson from a course, here, do this. We don't always have to use these principles that way. We just have to be the expression of love. So what form it comes through us, we start to get less and less concerned about, because we know that if we are in a state of love, then whatever we do and say will simply be loving. And so our whole work is, again, just to keep ourselves as clear and as loving as possible, so that we take the ego's hand less and less often.
Very true. And one of the distinctions I think that you start to recognize early on, associated with that word love, is that love is not, a biological response. It's not an urge. It's not warm, fuzzy puppies and, living in a state of disjointment or disconnect from the world that you're experiencing. Love is a profound and deep experience because it is at the core of life itself. So you can use those words interchangeably. You can say life, you can say love, and realize that they are both one and the same, because that is the essence, the presence, and the activity of God. So when we're thinking of God and we give God a personality and try to embody God in some kind of a relatable image, we're diminishing our capacity to understand God. God is so transcendent. And as you move deeper and deeper into those contact points where you are experiencing the atonement, the more you begin to realize that you don't know love. The whole concept of love is so foreign to where you're at in this physical world that it's not even something that can be talked about in an effective way. It is something that you have to surrender to. And as you go through the process of surrendering, you are lifted up. You are taken to a whole different dimension and a whole different level of comprehension. So, when we talk about love, we're talking about a force. And it is the most creative force that has ever been. It is the force of God in the process of unfoldment. It is the expression of God. It is the living activity of God. And when you start to get a glimpse of what love truly encompasses, you all of a sudden realize how trivial all of your pursuits in life have been.
Yeah, and in that sort of unknowable nature of what love is, it just reminds me of this great section in chapter 31, page 660, in the third edition of FIP. It says, when every concept has been raised to doubt and question, and been recognized as made on no assumptions that would stand the light, then is the truth left free to enter in its sanctuary, clean and free of guilt. There is no statement that the world is more afraid to hear than this: I do not know the thing I am, and therefore do not know what I am doing, where I am, or how to look upon the world or on myself. Yet in this learning is salvation born, and what you are will tell you of itself. So again, when we let go of all the concepts, the experience of the divine truth will come to us. It is inevitable. And that's really what we're doing here. We're just peeling away all the false to reveal what has always been true within, but just been out of our awareness.
Exactly. It's the true resurrection, because you're unconscious, or the resurrection of the body becomes irrelevant in that journey, because you realize that the truth of who you are has always been, and it could never be lost. And that's the beauty, once again, of the way that God creates. God's creation is perfect and eternal, and you are God's creation. So looking at it from that level, you're pretty amazing. And, maybe it's time for you to spend more time loving yourself and helping yourself to get, more deeply invested in the truth of your own identity.
Very true. Very true. And my response to that is, oh, shucks, you're pretty amazing too, Chris.
Well, thank you. I'm going to have to go get a haircut at some point, but other than that, yeah, I would agree with you.
Well, this has been really a joyful time as always. Just to kind of plug a couple of good news events with Charlie, who couldn't join us this morning, but I'm sure will rejoin us again when he can. Charlie and I are doing that in Glenview this Saturday, the 12th, and then in Light of Grace Church in the Milwaukee area the following Saturday, January 19th. So all that information can be found at my website, miraclesu.org, under live workshops or live events. I forget what it says exactly, but it's there listed. And yeah, and then this coming Monday, we are recording our next Miracles at the Movies. So we're going to be exploring the movie Contact, which is a very, very great movie, one of my all-time favorites. So I'm looking forward to talking with you and Devin about that on Monday.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that too. I watch Contact probably 2 or 3 times a year. I have a huge movie collection. It is one of my favorites. There are some very poignant moments in that movie. So it will be great fun to see how A Course in Miracles relates to Jodie Foster and that whole crew as they're in search of some other kind of life in the universe.
Fun stuff. Fun stuff.
Well, I will see you this weekend, and all kinds of wonderful things will be unfolding. So looking forward to reconnecting in person.
Likewise. So yeah, have a good couple days. I'll see you on Sunday, and then we'll be joining with Devin on Monday. A lot of fun stuff coming up here.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right. Bye, man.